Hi, this is Bill Mahon Photo, Video, Audio, Multimedia, and Drone. And yes, I know that's a mouthful, but I do it all. And so here today we're going to have a brief video just talking about the different types of cameras. And we'll have future videos that will follow this one that will go over the different types of equipment. And it'll be the equipment that I use on an everyday basis for photo, video, audio, multimedia, and drone. But today we're going to focus on the cameras, everybody's favorite. So let's start with this camera. This is a Canon 5D SR, mainly a studio camera. Doesn't shoot 4K, but shoots crazy high-end, really nice HD 1080p files. The files for photos are fantastic. They're really massive, even around 16 by 20 native right out of the camera. So great camera, not necessarily for video shooting. It's also heavy, not great for putting on a gimbal unless you want to break your back. But most of the cameras are set up to be able to do both photo and video. That way I have about the same lens on each one of my cameras, minus the little GoPro style, which is not a GoPro, it's the DJI Osmo Action. So let's take a look at these four cameras. Canon 5D SR, the Canon EOS R, that's the full frame mirrorless, the Sony a6500, and the relatively new DJI Osmo Action camera. Each one of them are great for what they're designed for, and each have a purpose. And those purposes even cross over. So I mix them up quite frequently. Maybe not every day, maybe not every job, but quite frequently. Some jobs kind of require, or it makes it easier if I have the same camera and multiple of them. So for instance, like with the EOS R, that full frame mirrorless camera, I've got multiple of those cameras, and some jobs will require, or maybe it's easier on the post-production, if all the cameras are the same. Definitely is cleaner. Some jobs require photo and video. So I'll use one of these cameras for video, and more than likely either the EOS R or the 5D SR, excuse me, for photos on the same job. A lot of times on gimbal work, or if I need to keep things real light, I'll lean more towards the Sony a6500, great camera, okay? If I need to be on the fly and be inconspicuous, this action camera, the DJI Osmo Action, is really fantastic. Now, for the most part, I've got this standard that's really high. I really like high-end, nice quality images, whether it's photo or video, including the audio, which we'll get to in a later video. For the most part, each of these cameras, I prefer to see the film and the quality, rather, the filming done in the 4K. This one does not do that. Now, its 1080p HD file in the size and quality will rival these because it's such a massive sensor, but it's still not 4K. So I prefer all of these to be in 4K, especially on the smaller APS-C sensor, which is the largest non-full frame sensor. That particular camera I really only like in 4K when it comes to video. I don't really like the quality of the 1080p out of there. Now it's fine, but it's just lacking a little bit on my part, okay? Same with the DJI Osmo Action. The reality is I really prefer it in 4K. I like the quality best in 4K. On the EOS R, the EOS R looks really nice, both in 1080p HD and the 4K. But again, I really prefer the latitude in the room of the 4K file. And of course, 4K is more about size than it is quality, but it is quality at the same time. When I'm out doing a photo job, I really like the ability, and I'm used to this style, like with most people, this style camera for shooting photos. However, I have gotten used to shooting on the EOS R and the still photos on here as well. The files are massive, they're really, really nice. One of the benefits, let's talk about benefits of some of these cameras. The benefits of the full frame cameras, of course, is the file size. The actual pixel by pixel dimensions is definitely much larger on both the full frame cameras. It doesn't mean that when you have a crop sensor like the A6500 or a very cropped sensor like the DJI Osmo Action, doesn't mean that the image quality is no good. It's actually spectacular, even out of here, if it's done right. On the 5DSR, again, really designed for a studio camera, and shooting stills, of course, not really designed for video. One of the downsides, if you do shoot 1080p, even though the files are beautiful, the 1080p HD, is there's no headphone jack. They really left out a key needed element. So if you're going to do audio, you need something that's going to record and directly into the camera, and you will use the camera then to adjust the audio input levels, which is 100% necessary. On the EOS R, it does have a headphone jack, which is just a huge bonus in my point. From being out there on the road and knowing what the needs are, you really need a headphone jack, or rather it makes it much easier. Sometimes, even on a great camera like this, not having a headphone jack, again, causes some challenges. And of course, no headphone jack just natively built into the action camera. It's not absolute necessity, but it sure will make your life easier when you're concerning yourself and trying to get good audio as well as good video. You know, one of the benefits of the mirrorless camera, of course, is its size. You know, the size and weight. Now, the weight isn't spectacularly less than on this camera, but the size is much smaller. So plus it's minus some weight. So you can see right off the bat some automatic benefits by the full frame mirrorless camera. The other benefit, which might seem not as professional, but I'm finding it to be more and more professionally needed, is the little pop-out screen. Of course, in the back, it can either be where it's not the screen, or it can also be where you spin the screen and put it back so you can see it while you're filming. Okay, or it can be that traditional pop-out screen, and it can go the other way as well for any kind of vlogging type needs. But what I'm finding now more and more is that I get into situations, especially at events or something, where I need to get the camera maybe in a really high position and I can't get up on a tripod, or I can't get up rather on a step stool, and it can't be on a tripod. I can get that way up high and have that screen pointing down. And the fact that it is a touch screen is just a huge benefit to be able to get the images that may not be as possible with the 5DSR without a stepladder or without a tripod. Now, the A6500 has also a pop-out screen, but it pops out in this fashion and angles up and down. It doesn't actually flip out and come out to the side. There is some benefit to that as well. The downside of the screens on these cameras that shoot 4K is even the screen itself produces heat and adds to the heat of the camera. I think one of the deficits on the A6500, I think the two biggest deficits is you have to be careful in 4K that it doesn't overheat. If you're shooting or filming rather for a long period of time, what you're going to want to do here is get that screen popped out and away from the back of the camera so it's not adding to the heat of the system. What I've also done is bought little tiny, they're about yay big, maybe that wide by about that long, little ice packs. You want to be careful of condensation, of course, okay, but with a little cloth around them, I've put little ice packs here when I've needed to film for a long period of time. You can also shut off the heat sensor. I don't recommend it if you don't have to. But it has a heat sensor in there that it will turn itself down as to not damage the internal working parts. Don't recommend that unless you want to take that risk. I do take that risk. I have it turned off, and thus when I see the little heat sensor pop up on my screen that the camera's getting hot for a long period of filming, I'll put those little ice packs right here, and that does the trick just fine. The other deficit of this particular camera is, well, I'll tell you what, the battery life just really stinks. I've got 9 or 10 batteries for this, and it really burns through batteries quick. if you're shooting video, especially in 4K, it really burns through them quickly. You've got to have it. The upside to this camera is that you can also plug in an external battery and run it off an external battery, which is fantastic. And to my knowledge, I've not seen a way to do that generically, that is, with the Canon EOS R. I know they make a battery pack, or rather a AC plug-in pack that would work, and that's great. I don't have that. But this particular camera will allow you to have any generic little external battery, and with the right cable plug it in and run the camera off that battery. That's actually huge, and I do that all the time. I purchased this about a year ago, maybe a little bit more than a year ago, for a job that I was doing and a trip that I was going on, and it just performed marvelously. Both the 4K video and the still images set at its highest quality really were superb out of this camera for what it was designed for. I would say as a whole, just like the A6500, battery life on this camera, but it's the same as with the GoPro, kind of stinks as well. You got to have enough batteries with you and a multi-charger if you're going to go on a job that's going to take a lot of time in recording, or you're going to go on a trip where you're going to be on the road for some time. You really need many batteries for both of these cameras. The battery life, however, in the EOS R is fantastic. It does require, in the sense of it's recommended to use the N version of the battery, same batteries that the 5D DSR also takes, but it takes the non-N version of the battery. And so they've made some sort of changes, and if you have the N version of the battery in here, which is just the same, it looks exactly the same as the battery in the 5DSR, but this is the N version, LPE6N, where this camera doesn't require the LPE6N, just the LPE6 battery. I can interchange the N and the non-N batteries for both of these cameras. You just get a longer life out of it, and it's really superb on battery life. Same with the 5D SR. Battery life on this camera is fantastic. Since you see that I have the vertical grip on here that takes 2 batteries. When you put 2 batteries in here, you really can shoot, if you're shooting still images, you really can shoot all day without even concern, even thousands of photos. It does great on the battery. Not so sure about just a single battery in its built-in grip, because I don't shoot that way and never have since these cameras came out. So I only know about the 2 batteries. I'd say a couple of things to think about. If you're working on video, I guess your best all-purpose lens, if you can only afford one lens, for instance, on this camera, on the EOS R, I'd buy the 24-105. It really is a good all-purpose lens for both shooting still photos and for shooting videos. Doesn't mean there's no lenses out there that are maybe better for a certain project or a certain look that you're looking for, but it really is the best all-purpose lens. They make the same lens for the Canon EOS line, the standard line, 24-105, and I can interchange the EOS lenses on the EOS R with the adapter, and they work great. Not all lenses work on the adapter very well, like for instance the 70-200 2.8L lens. Oh, it's kind of hit or miss. It seems to struggle using the adapter, but the major staple lenses for the most part all work well on here with the adapter. I don't know if they make an adapter to let me use the R on here. I haven't seen it, but maybe they do. Same thing on the A6500. Being a crop sensor, the APS-C sensor, its version is an 18-105 equivalent, f4 all the way through the lens, just like these are, f4 all the way through the lens, is really its best all-purpose just video lens. I have other lenses, a good collection for all these cameras, but if you can only afford one, this is the one to buy, this is the one to start with, without question. It'll let you do the most. And of course, on the DJI Osmo Action, it has a built-in lens, and the thing that's different about this camera that is different than the GoPro camera is that the lens on the front is actually a screw mount, in which allows you to add screw mount neutral densities. And I'll tell you what, that's just gold. It's not so bulky, it still keeps it watertight. And just like with the GoPro, it does not need a housing any longer to be able to go underwater. One of the other big features that's huge is I can switch the preview or the image live view to the front screen that's here. It's tiny. So if you're doing some kind of selfie or blogging or something, it's perfect because you get to see exactly what you're doing. The GoPro does not have that. The image stabilization built in to the DJI Osmo Action is just absolutely superb. You could literally hand hold it like this and run, and it's stable. And it's called Rocksteady, and it really is fantastic. But I think those three features on this particular camera give it a little bit of an edge, in my opinion, or at least how I shoot over the GoPro. But I wouldn't say it's a better image quality or a better build quality. They're definitely equivalent on those three features. The in-body image stabilization on the A6500 is superb. It really is superb. It's fantastic. The touchscreen on the back of the camera is fantastic. The autofocus is just so fast, lightning fast, whether I'm allowing it to focus on its own, whether I'm using the touchscreen and touching different areas. It really is fantastic. On the EOS R, the image stabilization is not in the body, it's in the lens. So is one better than the other? I don't know. Maybe it's more simplified. If it's in the body, then every lens you put on has image stabilization. For instance, I have some lenses, howbeit prime lenses for the EOS 5 or the EOS 5 DSR that are prime but no image stabilization. That would be real handy to have it in there. Is it a deficit on still photos? Oh, maybe half the time. Is it a deficit on video? Half the time, but definitely would be a big improvement. I heard, a little birdie told me, or rather I got an email saying there is a new EOS R series coming out with in-body image stabilization. That'll really be a big improvement for the EOS R line of cameras. However, its image stabilization is equal to what I see out of the A6500, the Sony camera, with a lens that has image stabilization built in. It really is equal. Both cameras are relatively easy to handhold and handhold stable. I don't know about running with them. You need a gimbal for that. But keep in mind, this is a lot smaller, a lot less weight than the EOS R line of cameras. As a whole, I would give the EOS R series just an A+. It's a fantastic camera. It is worthy of buying. The quality is fantastic on the images. The quality is fantastic on the 4K video. It really is fantastic. You definitely have to learn a new way. If you're used to the Canon EOS line, they have reconfigured all the buttons. This monitor, the screen rather, looks the same, and it moves across with the tools left to right and top to bottom, the same as here. But all the buttons are different, and you've got to learn a new system. Oh, I don't know, if you're somewhat tech savvy, it'll take you a day to kind of get it figured out, maybe a couple of shoots till you get comfortable with it. I don't mind it anymore. It's actually very intuitive once I understood how it's working. Same with this camera. I'm so used to this. This didn't change for years, maybe even since the beginning of digital for DSLR type cameras. The buttons and functionalities really on the pro level cameras and above have stayed kind of constant, maybe even until now. This is the oldest camera that I have up here, but this camera is still superb. It's very viable. The image quality out of here is just fantastic. One of its deficits is it only gives you an ISO rating of up to 6400 ISO. Very limiting. I do a lot of corporate events at times, and when you get into any kind of event situation, you know that you need that high ISO. Each one of these will let me take the ISO so high that it's just ridiculous. You don't have to really worry about noise any longer. If you're using at least the last several series of Adobe Photoshop CC, like 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, and so on, when they reworked the algorithms for the noise reduction in Photoshop, you really don't need to worry about the noise any longer, even way up at that 10,000 ISO. It's just so ridiculously good with very little noise reduction added, and you just can't see it. It's really good. On the video side, kind of works the same way. So I'd say that is one deficit now with these newer cameras. is that the ISO only goes up to 6400, and some of the jobs I do, maybe a quarter of the jobs, really need a camera that lets me take those ISOs up much higher. As far as each of these cameras, I use all of them, whether photo or video or a combination, which is what I do most of the time. They all have their purpose. They all work great. They all serve their need. They all are really high quality. The builds are all really good on these cameras. They're definitely, I mean, I guess technically they might fall in a high prosumer range, but you know, I'm a full-time working pro and I use this level of camera, and they're definitely a pro camera, hands down. I would recommend any of them, and please stay tuned and watch future videos on my new channel. I will follow up with these videos as quickly as possible, giving you not just products, but also lighting demonstrations, how-to. I'm going to include drone things, audio things, grip equipment. I'm going to run through the gamut of things. I will also be doing live screen recording of both Photoshop, working in Bridge, working in Premiere, working in Audition, working in After Effects. I'm going to be adding those as well, basically building kind of a one-stop shop online school for all your photo, video, audio, multimedia, and drone needs. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, and I appreciate you taking time to take a look at what I have to offer. Thank you very much.